Okay, picture this. President Bill Clinton, it's 1997, and he's standing there apologizing for the Tuskegee syphilis study. I mean, talk about a powerful moment decades late,
Whoa.
right? Acknowledging this terrible harm.
Yeah, that image really sticks with you. And it immediately raises the question, what is a public apology? Because they're often not what they seem on the surface.
Exactly. They feel like these really complex linguistic acts that seem to serve all sorts of purposes,
Yeah.
sometimes way beyond just saying sorry.
Absolutely. They can be strategic, political moves, sometimes even like self-promotion. Or, remarkably, sometimes the apology is just missing altogether.
Right. And that's what we're digging into today. We want to give you, the listener, a kind of shortcut to understanding all those hidden layers, the meaning, the intent, the impact behind these public moments.
We've got this great stack of sources to draw on, really fascinating stuff that sheds light on why apologies work or why they sometimes fall flat.
So let's unpack it. Where do we start? Maybe with what a full apology actually looks like.
Good place to start. The sociologist Irving Goffman, he laid out a kind of framework. He suggested a really complete apology involves, well, four things.
Okay.
First, you have to acknowledge what you did. Then you disavow the act itself, say it was wrong. Third is repenting, showing remorse. And finally, offering some kind of restitution, making amends somehow.
Acknowledge, disavow, repent, restitute. Got it. That sounds like the gold standard.
It is kind of the ideal, but here's the interesting part. Context is huge. It massively affects how an apology lands. Take Carla Faye Tucker.
Oh, right. Her final words before her execution were just, I am so sorry.
Exactly, and just those words, I am so sorry, they don't tick all of Goffman's boxes on their own, do they? It's an expression of emotion.
No, not really. But the sources point out it was widely seen as a full apology. Why was that?
Because people understood it in the context of everything else, her earlier religious conversion, her detailed confession, all the reports about her remorse and moral growth, her prison ministry work.
So her actions over years essentially filled in the other parts of Goffman's definition.
Precisely. Her life in prison sort of became the repentance and the attempt at restitution, in a way. It made those simple words, I am so sorry, incredibly powerful. It shows the deepest apologies aren't always just about the words used right then.
That really highlights the difference context makes. And it brings up another key thing, doesn't it? The actual words we choose, like I apologize versus I'm sorry.
Yes, that's a fundamental distinction. I apologize is really unique. Linguists call it a performative verb,
Performative,
meaning saying the words is doing the action. The apology happens in the act of saying, I apologize.
okay, like saying I promise or I bet. You're not describing promising, you are promising.
Exactly. But I am sorry, that uses an adjective. It describes your emotional state. Or I regret it. That's a verb reporting your state of mind. They imply an apology, sure, but they don't literally perform one in the same way.
So technically, if someone just says, I'm sorry, they haven't actually done the apologizing in that formal performative sense, even if they feel terrible.
Technically, yes. And for any apology, even the performative I apologize, to actually work, the philosopher John Searle said there are these four conditions. They call them felicity conditions.
Okay, what makes an apology felicitous?
Well, first, it has to be about a past act the speaker actually did. Second, the speaker has to acknowledge it was harmful or wrong. Third, and this is key, the speaker has to sincerely regret it. And fourth, the words used have to actually count as an apology in the language everyone involved understands.
So you need the past act, the harm acknowledged, genuine regret, and the right words recognized as an apology. If any of those are missing,
Then even saying I apologize can just fall completely flat. Yeah, it won't be successful.
it's fascinating how technical it can get, and you really see these ideas play out when corporations apologize, don't you? Like that McDonald's case in 2001.
Oh, the French fries, yes. They had marketed them as vegetarian but were using beef fat in the pre-frying process. Big controversy.
So how did they handle the apology, linguistically speaking? Did it meet those conditions?
Well, it was very strategic. They did use the performative. McDonald's sincerely apologizes, so check that box. But look at what they apologized for.
What was it?
They emphasized failing to provide information. See the difference.
So it's a harm of omission, not commission. They didn't say, we misled you, or we were wrong to use beef fat. They said, we didn't tell you enough.
Exactly. It's subtle but crucial. And the sources also mention this interesting pronoun shift.
Oh, yeah.
When talking about the past mistakes, they sometimes used we, but for the present apology and future actions, they shifted to McDonald's.
Like the entity McDonald's apologizes now, which creates a little distance from the we who made the mistake back then.
Precisely. It subtly distances the ongoing corporation from the past transgression. It really highlights this tension you often see in corporate apologies.
What tension is that?
Between an instrumental apology, damage control, fixing the PR, keeping shareholders happy, and a truly moral exploration of what went wrong.
Right.
Corporations almost always lean towards the instrumental.
Makes sense. It's about protecting the brand and the bottom line, ultimately.
Right. Genuine contrition often takes a backseat to strategic necessity.
So that leads us into looking at these different types of apologies or non-apologies. We've touched on instrumental ones. Political apologies often feel very instrumental.
Oh, definitely. Think about Joe Biden back in 2007, his comment about Barack Obama being clean.
Right, that caused a stir. He apologized pretty quickly, didn't he? Called Obama, issued a statement, even went on The Daily Show.
He did. He said he deeply regretted any offense. Explained he meant fresh, not clean. But was it a deep exploration of the comment's implications? Probably not.
So more about smoothing things over, achieving reconciliation quickly for political reasons.
Largely, yes. It served the purpose of closure in an instrumental sense. Everyone could move on. It's similar to Bob Kerry's apology to Obama later on.
What was that?
He'd made comments about underperforming Black youth. He apologized for the insult, but interestingly, he didn't specify what the insult was, nor did he really take full responsibility for the remarks themselves.
But it was accepted.
Yes, largely for expediency. The issue faded. These apologies, even if they lack deep moral accounting, often work because there's a kind of tacit agreement among the parties to let it go for practical political reasons.
It's almost like a transaction sometimes. And then there are apologies that aren't even really about the person supposedly being apologized to.
You mean like that Hartford Courant example?
Yeah, the newspaper apologizing to Thomas Jefferson for owning slaves. Centuries later, what was that about?
Well, it sounds odd, right? Apologizing to someone long dead for something everyone knows about. The sources suggest it wasn't really about Jefferson at all.
So who was it for?
It was more about the newspaper itself, a way to sort of celebrate its own long history, pat itself on the back for its current sense of fairness and moral clarity. Apology as self-promotion, essentially.
Wow. Okay, so apologies can be strategic, self-promotional. What about apologies under pressure? Or ones that just fail?
Oh, absolutely. Apologies aren't always freely given. Think about John McCain as a POW in Vietnam.
Right, he was forced to make that confession under torture, basically.
Exactly. He was coerced into saying he was a black criminal and an air pirate. It's a stark reminder that sometimes apologies are extracted, not offered willingly. It makes you wonder how many historical apologies weren't genuine at all.
Or think about Abraham Lincoln trying to avoid that duel.
Yeah, back in 1842, he'd written the satirical letter, got challenged. His response was this incredibly careful, conditional apology.
Conditional how?
He basically said, okay, if you rephrase your challenge in a non-insulting way, then I will state the following. He spelled out the exact words he'd use, but only if the other guy backed down first. It was a negotiation.
A negotiated apology to avoid violence shows how complex these things can get.
Yeah.
And sometimes even a seemingly sincere apology can backfire, right? Like with Woodrow Wilson.
That's a fascinating case. He'd made a tactless comment about Colonel Harvey, who had supported him. Wilson wrote a second letter, much more apologetic and contrite than his first attempt.
You'd think that would fix it.
You would, but it totally backfired. People accused him of ingratitude, and paradoxically, it actually ended up boosting his image among progressives because it made him look independent, like he wasn't beholden to political bosses like Harvey.
So the apology failed to repair the friendship, but accidentally succeeded politically.
Pretty much. A perfect example of how unpredictable the effects of an apology can be, even when perhaps the intent was genuine reconciliation.
Okay, so moving from failed attempts to just outright refusal, the art of not apologizing. Richard Nixon after Watergate is maybe the prime example.
Definitely. In his resignation speech, and later on, he talked about regret and pain, admitted wrong judgments, but a direct apology, never.
Why not? What does that refusal signify?
Often, it's about preserving face, avoiding what's perceived as weakness or groveling, as Nixon put it. For him, and maybe for others in power, admitting fault directly feels like surrendering, giving in. The cost seems too high.
We saw something maybe similar with Dick Cheney after the hunting accident.
Yeah, he shot his friend, Harry Whittington. Cheney took factual responsibility. Ultimately, I am the guy who pulled the trigger. But there was no expression of remorse, no apology.
And wasn't it Whittington who ended up apologizing for the trouble Cheney went through?
It was a really striking reversal. Cheney accepted the facts but offered no emotional or moral contrition.
And corporations can do this too, right? Just refuse.
Absolutely. Dow Chemical, after they acquired Union Carbide, consistently refused to accept responsibility for the Bhopal disaster. Their line was always about having no legal obligations.
So using legal shields and corporate structure to avoid the moral question entirely.
Exactly. It's about limiting liability and protecting the corporate face, often through strategic silence or legalistic arguments.
What about Ronald Reagan and Iran-Contra? That felt really complex, like a non-apology apology.
It was incredibly complex. He said that famous line, "My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true, but the facts and the evidence tell me it is not."
Which sounds like an admission, but also not.
Right. The media largely treated it as an apology, but critics pointed out the ambiguity. He cited failing memory, concern for hostages. It allowed him to acknowledge conflicting information without taking direct personal responsibility for misleading anyone. It served multiple political purposes simultaneously.
And even on a less world stage level, Lucille Ball explaining her Communist Party registration from the 30s.
Yeah, she explained she did it to please her dying socialist grandfather, but she framed it as something that at the time wasn't wrong, but apparently now it is.
So an explanation and account of her actions, but not really an apology for the action itself.
Exactly. She reframed the context to make her past actions understandable, maybe even relatable, rather than expressing regret for them. It's a common tactic, provide an account, not an apology.
Let's shift gears slightly to national apologies. Countries grappling with their own history. We started with Clinton and Tuskegee.
A really significant moment. The government acknowledging this profound wrong done to its own citizens over decades. It underscores that while individuals can condemn the past, it really falls to national leaders to issue that formal apology for the nation, and often to authorize redress.
Like with the Japanese-American internment during World War II, Congress apologized in '88.
Yes, and importantly, they named the causes.
Yeah.
Race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. And they authorized redress payments.
And didn't different presidents handle the letters that went with those payments differently?
They did. Both George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton sent letters, but they emphasized slightly different aspects of the apology and their reconciliation process. It shows how even when addressing the exact same historical event, the specific language and framing choices matter.
Germany is often held up as an example of a nation really confronting its past.
Yeah, Willy Brandt kneeling at the Warsaw Ghetto Monument in 1970 was incredibly powerful, a nonverbal act of atonement.
And then President von Weizsäcker in '85.
Calling VE Day a day of liberation, not just defeat, for Germans. It was part of this long, deliberate process Germany undertook to accept national responsibility for the Nazi era. It's quite a contrast to some other nations.
Like Japan, perhaps, their 1995 resolution expressed deep remorse for aggression.
But crucially, the word apology itself was left out. Conservative elements objected. It really highlights the intense internal political battles and shifts in public mood that have to happen for a national apology to emerge. The specific words chosen are so loaded.
More recently, the UK apology to Alan Turing.
Right, Gordon Brown in 2010 for the chemical castration Turing endured because he was gay. Brown was very direct about the terrible treatment of Turing and many thousands of other gay men.
So, naming the specific victim, but also broadening it.
Yes, explicitly apologizing for Turing's treatment, while implicitly acknowledging the broader systemic harm caused by homophobic laws at the time. It shows how apologies can have both a specific target and a wider resonance.
And these issues get even more complicated across cultures, don't they? That incident with the USS Greenville submarine and the Japanese fishing boat, the Ihame Maru.
Oh, absolutely. A tragic collision in 2001. The U.S. response was interesting. High-level officials, President Bush, Colin Powell, Rumsfeld, the ambassador, the admiral, they all apologized relatively quickly.
But the sub-commander, Scott Waddell, didn't initially.
No, his initial silence was perceived very negatively by the Japanese victims' families. They saw it as insincere, lacking proper remorse. They expected a direct personal apology immediately. One father even said Waddell should fall on his knees and ask for our pardon.
Wow. That points to a real cultural difference in expectations.
It really does. Japanese culture has this concept of suno, which is kind of like a selfless surrender to the victim's perspective, putting yourself at their mercy, in a sense. The focus is on alleviating the victim's suffering.
Whereas the American focus might be more
On sincerity, meaning expressing truthful remorse if you genuinely believe you were responsible. There's more emphasis on individual culpability and authentic feeling.
So an American might see the Japanese style as maybe overly self-deprecating if they don't feel fully at fault.
Potentially, yes. And conversely, a Japanese person might see the American focus on sincerity and careful wording as maybe evasive, calculating, or not fully acknowledging the victim's pain.
It's easy to see how misunderstandings happen, even with good intentions on both sides.
Definitely. These differing cultural scripts for apology can really complicate reconciliation efforts. Understanding those nuances is so critical for any kind of cross-cultural interaction, especially when harm has occurred.
Okay, let's dig into the why behind apologies, the psychology of it. Why do we apologize? Or maybe just as interesting, why don't we?
Aaron Lazar, a psychiatrist who studied this, talked about external and internal motivations.
Okay, external first.
Those are often the instrumental reasons we've discussed. Apologies can repair relationships, restore your reputation, resolve conflict, just let everyone move on. Practical stuff.
And internal.
That's deeper. It's driven by empathy, feeling the other person's pain, guilt over doing something wrong, and sometimes shame, feeling like you failed to live up to your own standards, your own self-image. These feelings, Lazar argued, really form the basis of our conscience.
So it can be practical, but also deeply tied to our sense of self and morality.
Right.
Given all that, why the resistance? We talked about Nixon, but there's this broader idea, right? The John Wayne Code.
Ah, yes, from She Wore Yellow Ribbon. The line is, "Never apologize, mister. It's a sign of weakness."
Has that idea just permeated our culture? Especially maybe American culture.
It seems to have had a big impact, yeah. Apologizing can feel like it clashes with ideas of strength, self-reliance, even American exceptionalism for some, but it's interesting.
What's interesting?
The source material points out that in the actual movie, the code is more complex. Wayne's character isn't always anti-apology, and other characters do apologize. The phrase itself has kind of drifted from its original context and taken on this harder meaning.
So why the refusal, psychologically? Is it just fear of looking weak?
That's part of it, but it's also fear of consequences, fear of punishment, ostracism, and fear of damage to your self-image, what sociologists call losing face. Admitting fault can be deeply threatening to our sense of self.
That idea of losing face feels powerful, and the consequences when apologies are withheld. You mentioned Thelma and Louise.
Right. Thelma starts the film apologizing constantly for minor things, but by the end, after all they've been through, she's demanding an apology at gunpoint from this awful trucker.
And he refuses.
He refuses, dismisses her, and the result is explosive. The tanker truck explodes. It's a dramatic illustration that withholding apologies, refusing to treat people with basic respect, can have incredibly serious, even violent consequences.
Wow. It really underscores how vital apology can be in just navigating human relationships. What about power dynamics? Does gender play a role? People often say women apologize more.
That stereotype exists, for sure. Hillary Clinton expressing regret over healthcare reform was seen by some through that lens, like she was taking on too much blame in a typically female way. But the sources suggest power might be the bigger factor.
How so?
Well, there's the idea that everything a powerful person says is taken seriously. Remember Reagan's comment about Martin Luther King Jr. to Coretta Scott King? His staff called it an explanation, but Mrs. King and the press widely interpreted his words as an apology simply because he said them.
The weight of his office gave the words apologetic force, even if that wasn't the explicit intent.
Exactly. Or think about President Eisenhower when that finance minister from Ghana was refused service at a diner because he was black.
Right? In Delaware. A huge diplomatic incident.
Huge. The State Department issued a formal apology, but Eisenhower went further. He invited the minister, Gibadema, to breakfast at the White House. That personal act by the most powerful person in the country carried immense weight. It wasn't just words. It was an action that aimed to repair the damage and send a message about American values, overriding the racism Gibadema had experienced. Power allows for apologies, verbal or acted, to have significant impact.
So bringing this all together, it's crystal clear that apologies are way more than just saying sorry. They're these incredibly layered acts.
Absolutely. Packed with personal feelings, cultural norms, political calculations, instrumental goals. It's a complex mix.
And understanding all these layers hopefully lets you, the listener, look at public apologies much more critically.
Exactly. You can start to see beyond the surface, to decode the purpose, the strategy, the real intent behind the words, whether it's an individual, a CEO, or a head of state speaking.
It really does give you a new lens for watching the world. So maybe a final thought to leave people with. Given everything we've talked about, the reasons apologies are offered or refused, the strategies involved, the cultural differences, what does it truly mean, do you think, to seek forgiveness? And maybe just as importantly, what does it really mean